A youth pastor in Arlington, Washington, was charged with 2 counts of third-degree child rape amid allegations he abused a teen girl he met in a youth group. Kendall Kippen, 27, was employed as a youth pastor at Jake's House Church in 2017 and 2018, according to charging papers filed in Snohomish Superior Court. His father is the church's lead pastor. The girl met Kippen in 2017 when he was 22, and she was 15. A police investigation found evidence that Kippen had repeated sexual contact with the 15-year-old girl that he'd met at the church. Another young woman came forward, alleging she too was a victim of Kippen's abuse, which began in 2016 while she attended a youth group at Jake's house. She was 17 then.
It was recently discovered that a man, William Barrett Riddleberger, who was featured on the front page of a pro-Donald Trump dating website, it was revealed that this man had been convicted of child sex crimes back in 1995. The picture on the website is of Barrett, and according to stories, I'm not sure if it's his girlfriend or his wife. However, the two met at a Tea Party function several years ago, so the website decided to have them on the front page. But Riddleberger, in 1995, filmed himself at age 25 having sex with a 15-year-old girl. That was the crime for which he was convicted. Now, according to a recent interview, Riddleberger says that he paid his debt for that crime, and people should move on.
A popular QAnon influencer, he speaks to a lot of his followers on a regular basis about how, the Democrats are a bunch of pedophiles, they're running sex rings out of pizza shops, and on and on. We've heard these things before. But it's just come out that he's the one doing that stuff. Surprise, surprise. His name is David Todeschini, and he also had an alias he went by because that's not shady at all. David Trent was the alias, and he's a well-known QAnon influencer. There's his face there.
So of course he accuses all Democrats of being pedophiles, even though he knows he sexually abused an 8-year-old. He knows who he is, right? And by the way, he might be in trouble here because he didn't register all of his aliases because he's on this dangerous sex offender list. This is one of the most popular QAnon guys in the country.
Jason Yates, the former CEO of My Faith Votes, a nonprofit organization pushing Christians to vote their values, has been charged with 8 felony counts for possessing CP material. And here's the twist. This is not his first offense. Yates has a prior conviction for similar charges that was later expunged. An unnamed witness handed over a hard drive to the authorities, one allegedly found in Yates's office and containing over 100 images of CP material. So, how did this hard drive come into the hands of law enforcement? According to the BCA's report, a relative of Yates discovered the drive by accident. They were simply looking for some extra storage and found this hard drive in his office.
Who here knows who created Stop the Steal in 2020? That would be me.
President Trump tweeted that a Stop the Steal protest will take place in Washington, D.C. next week. The president's tweet says the protest will take place on January 6th. That's Wednesday, and the same day Congress meets to formally count the votes cast by the Electoral College.
The Stop the Steal organizer, known as Ali Alexander, has now admitted to asking teenage boys for naked pictures and also sending inappropriate text messages to these teenage boys. Now, he posted a statement about his behavior and how he has been battling with same-sex attraction, which same-sex attraction is not a problem. being a 32-year-old male who sends inappropriate sexual messages to teenage boys is a problem. Now, Alexander has released a statement about this, as I mentioned multiple times. I want to get into that statement now, starting with this. He wrote, "This is too gay. I apologize for any inappropriate messages sent over the years. Forgive me. While having repented before God and confessed at church, I want my supporters and those involved to hear my apology today."
These are screenshots of Snapchat messages. The Ollie files, he calls it. Number 7, Nicholas, 15 years old, Nicholas, and quotes, Nicholas was 15 when Ali Alexander asked him for sexually explicit photographs in which he referred to as jack-off material. When asked him to lie to his parents so they meet for sex, offered to buy him alcohol and threatened to make his family go W2F if Nicholas ever spoke out.
Well, Paul and Jess, just a little bit earlier this evening, more police released this body camera video. In it, you can see and hear police ask the now disgraced former state senator, "What are you doing in a motel room with an underage boy?"
Yeah, because you have a juvenile in your hotel room.
March 9th, 2017, more police at the motel room door of former state senator Ralph Shorty.
Come out before you get me worried. Show me your hands.
Okay. I'm sorry, guys. You're kind of freaking me out a little bit.
Yeah, that's what we do. He's 17.
Shorty tells the officers that he was just helping the teen as a mentor.
We were just hanging out and talking about life and stuff, and we couldn't graduate high school, and he was trying to help him get his life on the track.
He tells officers that the juvenile is the one who brought the marijuana to the motel.
Getting high with a young kid, whatever, is a bad idea.
But just weeks before this body camera video, Ralph Shorty told me this about doing drugs.
You should not be doing them in front of minor children.
Shorty admits to driving the teen to the motel and chatting with him under a fake name.
Yeah, you can shut the door. You're good. We're done.
Now, Shorty was not taken into custody. He was not arrested that night. But this motel incident led to a lengthy investigation, and ultimately, Shorty pleaded guilty to child sex trafficking.
One of the first witnesses at the Ghislaine Maxwell trial was an Epstein sex slave using the pseudonym Jane Doe. Jane had already given a sworn deposition to authorities. In it, she recounted the horrific acts of sexual violence she was forced to endure. She also talked about a time when Jeffrey Epstein brought her to meet Donald Trump at his Mar-a-Lago resort when she was only 14 years old. This is an excerpt from that deposition.
During one of my encounters with Jeffrey Epstein, he took me to Mar-a-Lago, where he introduced me to its owner, Donald Trump. I was 14 years old at the time. Jeffrey Epstein elbowed Mr. Trump playfully, asking him, referring to me, "This is a good one, right?" Mr. Trump smiled and nodded in agreement. They both chuckled, and I felt uncomfortable. I was too young at the time to understand why.
All right, now to stunning new developments in the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, a woman identified only by the pseudonym Jane. She says disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein took her to meet Donald Trump in the 1990s when she was just 14.
Jane testified that both Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused her when at the age of 14. We're now on cross-examination, and there are a couple of headlines here. One, during cross-examination, the defense attorney asked her whether she said Jeffrey Epstein introduced her to Donald Trump. She said yes.
Here we go again, another Donald Trump delegate, another disaster. This one's from Maryland. Let me explain what happened here. A Donald Trump delegate to the 2016 Republican National Convention has been indicted in Maryland on federal charges that include using a minor to make child pornography, oh boy, illegal possession of a machine gun, and illegal transport of explosives. Now, two of these are, I guess, relatively unsurprising. There's a conservative delegate who's got a machine gun he shouldn't have. Who's surprised by that, right? And then they've got explosives. I know, those are the guys who are always like, oh, the Muslims got the bombs. Here I need to make an illegal bomb. So the child porn, I mean, look, whether you're surprised by that or not is up to you. But obviously, this guy's got to go. And by the way, let me also say, it's not like Donald Trump knew this guy was into child porn and made him a delegate. So don't go that far, okay? But there is a curious case of bad guys who seem to be attracted to Donald Trump. So let me give you a little bit more detail on this guy. And his name, by the way, is Caleb Andrew Bailey. He's 30 years old. And the federal indictment indicates and includes the allegation that from March 2015 to January 2016, Bailey attempted to use and did use a minor to engage in sexually explicit conduct to produce child pornography. So he wasn't just looking at child porn, he was making child porn. So that is beyond horrific, right? I mean, this guy's he got bombs, he's got child porn. Does it get any worse than this?
Okay, so he shows up on Bill Maher. This brings a lot of attention to Milo or Milo, call him what you want. And then people start checking into what he said in the past. And a clip of Milo defending effectively child rape and pedophilia has gone completely viral. And it has caused some real problems for Milo Yiannopoulos' career. It's from when he was a guest on the Drunken Peasants podcast about a year ago, a show I appeared on a couple of months ago, I believe it was. And Milo spent a long time effectively defending pedophilia, saying that attraction for adults to 13-year-olds is not necessarily a bad thing, that he's glad he had a sexual relationship with a Catholic priest when he was a kid. And first, he talks about, well, consent is sort of arbitrary.
This arbitrary and oppressive idea of consent, which totally destroys, the understanding that many of us have of the complexities and subtleties and complicated nature of many relationships. People are messy and complex, and actually, in the homosexual world, particularly, some of those relationships between younger boys and older men, the sort of coming-of-age relationships, the relationships in which those older men help those young boys to discover who they are and give them security and safety and provide them with love and a reliable sort of a rock where they can't speak to their parents. Some of those relationships are some of the most
molestation to me. It sounds
well,
like
you know what?
It sounds like Catholic priest molestation to me.
And you know what? I'm grateful for Father Michael. I wouldn't give nearly such good head if it wasn't for him.
Oh my God! Oh my.
Is Donald Trump a messiah? No. He's just a man who wants to give back to his country, America.
But let me ask you to tell us what you say happened beginning at age 14 with him.
Well, we started filming the show in September of '86 when I was 14, and he immediately took to me and befriended me and earned my trust. And then he started expressing his love for me, and sorry, it's emotional. And talking about marriage in the future. And then I was still 14 before my 15th birthday. We were at his house, in his car, in his garage, and he reached over and he penetrated me with his finger. And that is when the sexual touching and abuse started after that. And, Nick, he's put out a statement because there was stuff that didn't make that interview, where I did tell him that I was molested and that there was so much more to the story.
I do want to tell the audience about that. So it's this guy, Nick Ritchie, who's got a very raunchy website and radio podcast. And you share a manager, I should point that out for the record, but he came out with a statement just now to follow up on the interview he did of Nicole, where she's saying, I was 17 and, sort of laughing about she wanted to lose her virginity. And this is what Nick Ritchie has given us. He writes, I remember the day Nicole Eggert did the radio interview with me about Scott Baio. Nicole was distraught after the interview. And off air, she was an emotional wreck. She told me it was much worse than she described on air. She said, he molested me as a child, and I didn't know any better.
Ronald Williams II was a researcher for President Trump's Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. Trump launched the commission after making unfounded claims that millions of fraudulently cast ballots cost him the popular vote in the 2016 election. Williams' arrest came after police conducted a search of his home after they were tipped off by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. He was arrested after authorities said they found child pornography on his cell phone. Williams is charged with 11 counts of possession and distribution of child pornography.
I mean, some of these foreign girls, you know, Mr. Trump, in my country, we say hello with vagina. And
well, you could also say, as the owner of the pageant, it's your obligation to do that.
So you have done that. Now,
I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, you know, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. You know, I'm inspecting.
Right,
I want to make sure that
you're like
everything
a
is
doctor.
good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? You know, they're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
He just came strolling right in. There was no time to put on a robe. Some girls were topless. Other girls were naked.
The time that he walked through the dressing rooms was really shocking. We were all naked. He came backstage and was looking me over like I was just a piece of meat. No one dreams of being ogled when you're a little girl wanting to wear a crown.
It was certainly the most inappropriate time to meet us all for the first time. The youngest girl was 15, and I was the eldest at 19.
Ron P. Broussard Jr. was hired to the Trump University staff in 2007 after years serving as a motivational speaker at get-rich-quick seminars taught in hotel conference rooms. Though he has never been licensed as a real estate agent or broker, Broussard is listed as staff or coordinator for at least 5 Trump seminars titled Fast Track to Foreclosure. Records show the former Army sergeant was convicted at court-martial in 1994 of sodomy and indecent acts with a child. He then served 5 years in the military prison at Leavenworth, Kansas. Broussard, who now lives in Duluth, Georgia, is a registered sex offender. He told the Associated Press that his conviction involved the 8-year-old daughter of a fellow soldier.
For my garbage person of the week, we're going very serious here because it's a definite garbage person, but also we kind of have to make a point about this. So before I get to the details, I want to give you a content warning and a trigger warning. The things that this person did are about as disgusting as anything I could conceive of. And for some people, even hearing about the horrendous things that they did will be too much. So consider yourself warned. But my garbage person is Ruben Verastegui, I believe his name is. A former senior. Verastegui? Okay, thank you. A former senior ad designer for the Republican National Committee who called the sexual abuse of babies his, quote, absolute favorite. He has now been sentenced to 12 years in prison for receipt of child pornography. He was an active participant in an online group with at least 18 members dedicated to trading child pornography and casually discussing the sexual abuse of children. He told the group his preference was for babies, saying they were his absolute favorite. Solicited another member of the group for videos of babies being raped. He commented on videos saying he wished they were longer. And so now he pleaded guilty to charges of having 162 videos and more than 50 images of child pornography just on his phone alone back in July of last year. Federal judge sentenced him to 151 months in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. This is obviously, objectively, about as horrible a thing as you can imagine.
Hey, what up, everybody? A little bit of story time. So I live in an incredibly liberal state, Washington, yeah. And every time I wear this hat out in public, you know, people always give me those looks of, ooh, it's a MAGA hat. Ooh, it's so bad. He hates everyone. But then they read it, and usually they have a pretty good laugh, you know, in support of it. Then again, you still do get those people that are offended by it, but, you know, imagine that in a blue state. Ha! You know, ooh, they have rights too. No, they don't. The victim does, but they shouldn't have any. So, pretty cool hat, make pedophiles afraid again. I love it. So, yeah, people always mistake it for a MAGA hat.
Riley began a crowdfunding campaign to launch a non-profit aimed at catching online predators and deterring them from engaging in harmful acts against children.
But she was very descriptive of what was happening. And like I said, like, we're not here to cast judgment. We're not here to label people, and understand, like, there's things that happen in our lives that cause us to make mistakes. But it's an 11-year-old girl talking about things that were done to her that shouldn't have been done.
Like I said, it's not even a sexual thing. I don't feel attracted. It's just this weird impulse. I don't know. I don't know. It's so weird. God, this is just a weird conversation. Developing, you know, in certain areas, and you know, what's wrong with me? Oh God, I'm just a rotten sack of.
I grew up a Democrat, and I've always been a Democrat until I met this man right here.
A grand jury has indicted Pro Football Hall of Famer Lawrence Taylor on charges of third-degree rape and patronizing a prostitute. The indictment follows his May 6th arrest when prosecutors say he paid a 16-year-old girl $300 to have sex with him. The former linebacker was also indicted on charges of endangering the welfare of a child and sexual abuse and criminal sexual act in the third degree.
So these rooms, presumably there were women in these rooms?
Oh yeah, a lot of women.
Mm-hmm. How were they?
All over the room.
How were they dressed, Uncle Luke?
Half naked.
Half naked.
Half naked and some naked.
Half naked and some naked.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
We had a house party. They up in there naked. All the women were enjoying themselves like they do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, but the thing. Let me tell you, the thing is, when you're around, I've been around a lot of models and a lot of these pageant women, because that's what mostly it was. It was mostly pageant women.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of these women ain't of age. So when you got a whole bunch of these women running around, whether they of age or not, you know, there's a lot of things going on. You just, you know, some women look too young.
Oh,
so you keep it moving.
I see.
You know, so it wasn't nobody beating no women, nobody taking advantage of no women. I mean, they were all enjoying themselves. That's what they were there for. But were they old enough to be enjoying themselves? I don't know.
Was there sex?
Of course there was.
I guess that's a stupid question now to ask. Okay, so I think I got you now. You're saying that all this was going on and you weren't clear as to whether these were adults.
I wasn't clear whether or not they were adults. And I wasn't clear whether or not, whether I wanted to be in that kind of environment. Okay, he said, look, I got all these women. I got these women from the pageant. They're going to be there. So we went. It was like, hey, man, I got a pageant down here. I'm hosting these women at the house, okay, up in Palm Beach. They send some cars to pick us up. We get in the cars. We drive up there. Me, Mike, Eddie Murphy, we all in our own individual cars. Car service drove us up there. We got there. He showed us around the house. There wasn't no DJ. It was more of, hey, get in where you fit in. Whatever room you're going to go in, you go into that room.
So you say no DJ. There was no music? Or the music was piped in?
No, there wasn't no music.
No music.
That was the interesting part about it. There wasn't no music.
So women just naked in rooms with no music?
Hey, people walking around. It wasn't, listen, it wasn't nothing wrong with that. I was happy to be at that party, but then at the end of the day, when I started looking at some of these girls' faces, I was like, man, these girls don't look like they're old enough. I didn't ask nobody their age. And then all the other stuff going on, it was like, okay, I can't be up here. I got to go.
Our firm, along with the Gillespie Law Firm, represents approximately 24 former residents at Lord's Ranch who were sexually abused.
The Lord's Ranch was owned and operated by the Sewell family. It was founded by a man named Bud Sewell, and later his son Ted took over operations.
In 2021, the Arkansas legislature and governor took a stand for victims of child sexual abuse, and they passed a revival statute. That allows survivors to file civil claims against any types of defendants up until the end of January 2024.
Yesterday, after we taped, the White House announced that President Trump had commuted the prison sentence of Ted Sewell, a former operator of a behavioral health company in Arkansas, who was convicted on bribery and fraudulent charges in July of 2016.
Today, we shed light on a deeply troubling case exposing decades of abuse at the Lord's Ranch, an institution that was meant to provide care to children, but turned into a nightmare. Escaping scrutiny. The facility's fortunes improved during Huckabee's governorship, blocking investigations and avoiding consequences. Allegations of abuse have persisted for years, with survivors recalling instances of improper restraints and violent means used to thwart investigations. Sharing survivor stories. Survivors are now sharing their stories, some through a Facebook page titled What Happened at Lord's Ranch, and podcasts detailing the cruelty and sexual abuse.
Oh, wait a minute. We have a big celebrity here tonight. And I'll tell you something. He's great, and he loves his state. Congressman Matt Gaetz. Where the hell is Matt Gaetz? Where is he? Hello, Matt.
Former Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz tried and failed to block the release of that much talked about and very explosive House ethics report. CBS News reviewed the report, which accuses Gaetz of having sex with a minor, paying for sex with multiple women, and doing illegal drugs. Allegations in that report that Gaetz denies. That report accuses Gaetz of making $90,000 in payments to 12 different women. The House ethics report goes on to claim those payments were likely connected to sexual activity and to drugs. The committee wrote it heard testimony that Gaetz had sex with a 17-year-old girl at a party in 2017. The report called her Victim A and said she recalled receiving $400 in cash that evening, which she understood to be a payment for sex. The report also said Gaetz appeared to have set up an email account from his office in the complex of the Capitol to buy marijuana. That report went on to conclude that Gaetz violated House rules that prohibit prostitution, statutory rape, illicit drug use, and obstruction of Congress, among other standards.
A drag queen in Michigan has been arrested for sexually abusing children. Oh, wait, I'm so sorry. It wasn't a drag queen. It was a MAGA church leader. A 29-year-old man arrested for sexually assaulting children. Because that's apparently what happens when you try to tell us that it's the drag queens reading to children that are corrupting them. Kids need to be in church. And then they go to church and apparently get abused by their pastors. Let me read you this. This is from Newsweek. The 29-year-old worship director from Oakwood Church in Augusta Township, Michigan, faces 11 felony counts with charges dating back a decade. A decade! The man was arraigned, Zachary Joseph Radcliffe is his name. He was arraigned 2 weeks ago on 2 counts of aggravated child sexually abusive activity, 2 counts of child sexually abusive activity, and 6 counts of using the internet to communicate with another to commit a crime. He could face up to 25 years in prison if convicted. The charges stem from incidents as early as 2014, according to court records. This man, Radcliffe, also happens to be a staunch MAGA supporter. He's got photos on his social media wearing his Make America Great Again hat. And of course, at CPAC in 2019, he went up on stage and performed a song. And then got a photo taken, which is also on his social media, with none other than Donald Trump Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle. And let's remember, the first accusation of sexually abusing a minor was from 2014. So in 2019, he's up on stage at CPAC singing a song, taking pictures with Trump family members.
God bless the greatest president in our lifetime, Donald Trump.
It's a modern day phenomenon. The little girls just look great, you know.
Soon after his divorce, Ted found a new love, a young girl from Hawaii named Pele Massa.
She was like a dream, a fantasy, exotic dream of mine to meet her.
Ted was 30 years old, Pele just 17.
I was underage, and even back in the wild 70s, it just really wasn't a terribly appropriate situation in most people's eyes. And now it would be criminal.
Ted admits to a number of liaisons with underage girls, and while it may have raised eyebrows, it never raised the interest of local authorities.
I'll first post this TikTok user's reaction to hearing the song for the first time, and will then post the lyrics. Spoiler alert, the girl that Ted Nugent is singing about is 13 years old.
What do you got to do? What the fuck? This calls for a double. What the fuck?
Jane Doe has received numerous threats today, as have all the Trump accusers that I have represented. She is living in fear. She has decided that she is too afraid to show her face. She's been here all day, ready to do it, but unfortunately, she's in terrible fear.
Katie gives a vivid and horrifying description in her sworn affidavit of the 4 encounters she had with Donald Trump. None of Katie's allegations have ever been debunked, nor has she ever retracted any of her statements. The only reason that she didn't follow through with her lawsuit was because of the barrage of death threats that she faced by Trump supporters. In 2016, Katie gave an interview to the British tabloid, the Daily Mail. She gave graphic details of her encounters that are all confirmed in her affidavit. The Daily Mail also confirmed her story with a witness to all the encounters, Tiffany Doe, an Epstein recruiter and coach who witnessed all of the encounters. We learned from Katie and Tiffany's testimony that Jeffrey Epstein provided coaches for his clients with girls like Katie who were virgins and didn't know how to pleasure a man. The coach would sit in on the session and guide the victim according to the client's instructions. For normal-minded people, it is impossible to process this kind of depravity. But both the victim and her witness have sworn in an affidavit to the validity of these encounters, under the threat of perjury for making a false statement.
During our first encounter, Mr. Trump didn't really talk to me at all. He spoke at me, but he was talking to Tiffany more, telling her what he wanted me to do. I thought he felt like he was too good to even speak to me. Tiffany told me what I needed to do. Anything he did say to me wasn't that great. Like, you need some work. I was 13. I didn't know what I was doing. Mr. Trump said very little to me during that first encounter other than I reminded him of his daughter. After I finished the sex act, he made a comment that I wasn't great, before putting on his pants.
He is a former Commerce Department official in the Trump administration, sentenced to a 5.5-year prison term after pleading guilty to possession of child pornography. This is Adam Hageman, also sentenced to 5 years of parole after release and a mandatory requirement to register as a sex offender. He was apparently arrested back in November of 2020. You would think he would have been busy with the whole election thing, but no, he was found to be a member of an online group chat dedicated to sharing images of child sexual abuse. Here are the details. He shared with members at least one video of a child being molested, claimed to have sexually abused a child as young as 15, and indicated that he wanted to sexually assault children between the ages of 12 and 16 years old. Prosecutors asserted that they found dozens of child sexual abuse videos on his phone after they executed a search warrant against him. He also requested of the other members in this group that someone find, quote, a dad with a young kid he will rent out to us. Those are the crimes that he committed, and he will now be spending a number of years in prison, as seems 100% deserved. Prior to that, before serving in the Commerce Department under Donald Trump, he worked at Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA as a campus event coordinator, events that were frequently attended by underage children. If you want to see a picture of this individual, there he is.
A Texas state district judge sentenced MAGA hero Daniel Perry to 25 years in prison for shooting to death a man protesting police brutality. Governor Greg Abbott pardoned him as soon as it was legally possible. During the trial, there was a lot of evidence presented of hateful racist posts from Perry's texts and social media accounts. What wasn't talked about much was his online interaction with a 16-year-old girl. Perry's hunt for minors was also documented in his internet search records, where good chats to meet young girls appeared alongside attack on Jews in Texas. In what may be the most overlooked part of Perry's humiliating exposure, the young girl actually appears put off when Perry tells her to come up with a reason I should be your boyfriend. When he then tries to elicit praise from her by asking, "So why an old man like me?" the 16-year-old tosses back an impressively savage ego torture. "WYM, what do you mean?" she says. "I don't want you."
Developing tonight, a former GOP strategist convicted of trafficking minors, paying 15 and 16-year-old girls in exchange for sex.
He was a powerful GOP donor and political operative, and now he'll be spending 21 years in prison. Anton Lazaro was sentenced today for sex trafficking minors after he was found guilty of those crimes in March. Fox 9's Karen Scullin now with what happened in court and how he got to this point. Karen?
32-year-old Anton Tony Lazaro will be 51 years old when he gets out of federal prison. From there, it's 5 years on supervised release.
Anton Tony Lazaro was becoming a big GOP donor and political activist in Minneapolis. But now he's heading to prison. Prosecutors say Lazaro targeted young girls and gave the 15 and 16-year-olds cash and gifts. And in exchange, the girls would Uber to his upscale condo for sex.
Lazaro especially started floundering on the witness stand when Williams showed these messages to Bittman. On the anniversary of the death of Jeffrey Epstein, the world's most infamous sex trafficker, poor Jeff. Rest in peace, my brother.
All right, hey, this is Sean McHugh. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Prayer for Our Nation, hosted by Sean McHugh. They wanted to be a very religious event, and Sean McHugh was doing the prayer. And if you look, it even says, J6 Thanksgiving prayer call, put on the armor of God, 4 p.m. EST Thanksgiving Day. Together we make a stand through Jesus. Some pro-J6 accounts on Twitter think his sentencing won't go poorly. Well, if they bring up his past, which involves a crime against a child, I don't see that being the case.
A Trump supporter accused of storming the U.S. Capitol and heckling police officers for protecting pedophiles previously served jail time after being convicted in the statutory rape of a 14-year-old girl, according to court records. Sean McHugh was convicted in 2010 on a state charge of unlawful sex with a minor, according to California court records. McHugh was sentenced to 240 days in jail. The victim was 14 years old, and McHugh was 23 when the crime occurred. McHugh pleaded no contest to the underage sex charge. The victim and her mother signed off to the plea agreement as part of California's victims' rights law.
Uh-oh, I got the mic. This could be good. No, but I think we should start with, I just like to bring it up that there's a whole lot of people in this country that do give you a lot of credit for everything you've been doing for this country.
Out of all the pedophiles mentioned in this documentary, there is only one who never actually had any formal allegations made against him. The one person is mega superstar Kid Rock. For some unknown reason, Kid Rock blurted out a confession on his own. We'll look at the lyrics of his song Cool Daddy Cool first, through the eyes of a TikTok listener. And then I'll post the lyrics to help us try and figure out what would possess a grown man to write such lyrics.
Now some people say my mind's blown. I'm cooling like a snow cone. And my cell phone, I'm pagey. Can't call me, just page me. Young ladies, I like them underage. See, some say that's statutory, but I say it's mandatory. My story.
No. There's no fucking way we're putting this on the soundtrack.
Young ladies, I like them underage. See, some say that's statutory, but I say it's mandatory.
To provide further details on the parties Trump hosted, Gross found two former attendees who agreed to give details of what they saw going on. The first was a photographer who attended many parties, but requested that his name remain anonymous, for obvious reasons. Here's what he had to say.
Trump would take over suites on the corners of his hotel with views of Central Park and Grand Army Plaza.
The attraction for the men was young girls assuming they'd get somewhere by joining the party. Of course, it never happened. Young models were attracted to the parties with a simple, time-tested pitch. You'll meet rich guys who will help you. It was networking, but on a weird, bizarre scale. The girls were as young as 15 and were in over their heads. They had no idea, and they ended up in situations. There were always dramas because the men threw money and drugs at them to keep them enticed. It's based on power and dominating girls who can't push back and can be discarded. There's always someone to pick them back up. Trump would go from room to room. I was there to party myself. It was guys with younger girls, sex, a lot of cocaine, top-shelf liquor, but no smoking. Trump didn't approve of cigarettes. Trump was in and out. He'd wander off with a couple girls. He was getting laid like crazy. Trump was at the heart of it. He loved the attention, and in private, he was a total fucking beast.
The second attendee Michael Gross spoke to was not only a frequent visitor at the Trump parties at the Plaza Hotel, but also helped to organize them by recruiting models. His name is Andy Lucchese. He was a friend of Donald Trump's in the 90s. And in Michael Gross's article that ended up being published by the Daily Beast, for some unknown reason, Andy Lucchese allowed Gross to attach his name to his quotes.
It's fair to say that I was a recruiter for the parties. As for the parties themselves, there was cocaine around. Donald Trump did not do cocaine. He was in control of himself. Girls? Well, of course. But did he have sex with his female party guests? So, he's a man with a woman. How old were they? A lot of girls, 14, look 24. That's as juicy as I can get. I never asked how old they were. I just partook. I did partake in activities that would be considered controversial today.
Now, as for Elliot Broidy's business partner in that Cutter thing, well, as of today, he has a new and newly serious additional child pornography charge to contend with. Devlin Barrett and Rachel Weiner at the Washington Post were first to break the news today that George Nader has been indicted again on new child pornography charges stemming from an FBI search of his 3 iPhones at Dulles Airport in January of last year. These types of charges are not a novel thing for George Nader. In 1985, he was charged with importing child pornography into the United States. He ultimately had that charge dismissed on a technicality. A few years later, in 1991, he was again charged with importing child pornography from overseas. In that case, he was convicted. He was given a 6-month sentence. Years later, in 2003, he was sentenced again, this time in the Czech Republic. This time not for child pornography, but for child molestation. That conviction also resulted in a prison sentence in the Czech Republic. Despite that extensive record, though, George Nader did become some kind of advisor to the government of the United Arab Emirates and the government of Saudi Arabia. And he did then attach himself like a barnacle to the Trump campaign and the Trump White House, where he really made himself one of the guys. He was apparently around a lot.
Also address something because we've got some people that are concerned about it, and I understand that. I completely understand. But I am serving on a faith advisory council for President Trump. I was asked to serve on this council back when he was a candidate in May or June. I was also asked, thank you.
The founding pastor of Gateway Church, Robert Morris, resigned after a woman accused him of sexually assaulting her beginning when she was just 12 years old. Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes.
I'm Steve Eager. The woman says the abuse lasted from 1982 to 1987. The woman's allegations surfaced over the weekend. She says Morris sexually abused her while he and his wife were guests in her family's home in Oklahoma. Morris has said he was involved in an inappropriate sexual behavior in his 20s with what he called, quote, was a young lady.
He told me, he said, hey, come in my room before you go to bed tonight. I want to talk to you.
He was 21, Cindy was 12.
He started by touching my breast and putting his hands in my pants. He wanted me to stand and close my eyes so he could lift my shirt and pull my pants down and just look at me as a 12-year-old.
This guy's screaming, "We want Roy Moore." He's right. We need somebody in that Senate seat who will vote for our Make America Great Again agenda. So get out and vote for Roy Moore. Do it. Do it.
Kelly Harrison Thorpe says she was just 17 years old when she turned down an overture from Moore in 1982. Thorpe says she asked him, "Do you know how old I am?" He reportedly responded, "I go out with girls your age all the time." Those new accusations follow Beverly Young Nelson's emotional claim on Monday that Moore sexually assaulted her when she was 16 years old and he was 30. She says it happened when he gave her a ride home from her job. But the flood of accusations began 1 week ago. Lee Korfman tells the Washington Post she was only 14 when Moore, then 32, an assistant district attorney, sexually assaulted her back in 1979. Wendy Miller says she was 14 when Moore first approached her at the mall, and was 16 when Moore asked her out on dates. But she says they did not go out because her mother forbade it. Debbie Wesson Gibson says she was only 17 when Moore asked her out on several dates that, quote, did not progress beyond kissing.
Get out and vote for Roy Moore. Do it. Do it.
As of today, Tim Nolan is charged with 13 counts of human trafficking. 2 of those counts involve minors. He's charged with rape, prostitution, unlawful transaction with a minor, and tampering with a witness.
Good evening, everybody. The disgraced politician agreed to 20 years in prison for a list of sex crimes.
Local 12 broke this story last spring after a minor came forward and claimed that Nolan had coerced her into having sex for money. That led to a 30-count indictment that included charges of human trafficking, unlawful transaction with a minor, and prostitution.
Well, here's a guy named Tim Nolan. Tim Nolan. He's a Tea Party leader and a good Christian, and the former Trump campaign chair in Campbell County, Kentucky, which is right across the Ohio River from Cincinnati. He has just been sentenced to 20 years in prison for human trafficking. According to Cincinnati.com, this piece of shit, he's a former judge, a Christian, a Republican, a Tea Party leader, and a Trump campaign chair. He pleaded guilty of using drugs and threats of arrest to force women and girls under the age of 18 into sex acts.